Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear Holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the Middle East conflict that everybody is paying attention to involving Israel and Iran. Now, I'm going to be very, very, very blunt and real in this video, right? So if you guys don't like bluntness and realness, this is probably not the video for you, okay? But I'm going to keep it all the way 100, okay? When it comes to this conflict, because there are going to be people on the left and the right who are going to be fear-mongering about World War III. And I am here to tell you that this is not going to be World War III. And the reason why this is not going to be World War III is because Iran is weak as hell. Okay, they're very weak, and that is why we're not going to see a world war come from this conflict only, right? Unless there's some type of major escalation in the sense that China uses this as an opportunity to invade Taiwan, or Russia ratchets up their offensive against Ukraine, and all of this stuff kind of happens at the same time. This is not World War III, okay? This is Israel basically taking out Iran's nuclear capabilities before they have the ability to build a nuke, which we don't really know when that may or may not happen, because they've literally been saying that Iran is on the verge of building nukes or attaining nukes for literally decades, right? I mean, we're talking about going all the way back to the 90s. They've been saying that Iran is going to get a nuke any day now. But, you know, that allegedly still hasn't happened. As the president has been negotiating with Iran to try to come to some type of agreement in order to stop them from being able to obtain a nuke. And now all of a sudden you have Netanyahu in Israel leading these very ruthless strikes against Iran and the military leadership. Okay, they've essentially taken out some of Iran's nuclear facilities, their top nuclear scientists, their top military generals. They have basically castrated Iran in one blow, right? And for as much as people want to complain about Israel and the Zionists, okay, I got to tell you, you kind of got to respect how they move, okay? When you talk about Israel protecting their interests, they're quite literally fighting like multiple wars at one time, right? They're fighting a war in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza, and now in Iran. The Israelis, again, love them or hate them, you got to respect the way that they move, okay? So, again, this is why I try to tell you guys that I'm just going to keep it all the way 100 in this video when it comes to the perspective that I'm going to provide in this video, which, again, is not a pro-Israel perspective. It really is just a third-party neutral, like, hey, this is just how it is, right? I'll just call it like I see it type of perspective. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some of the latest updates on this conflict, because President Trump is indicating that America, okay, that we did in fact have knowledge that this was going to happen, even though there were earlier reports that President Trump did not sign off on it and that this was kind of a lone action by Israel. However, I find it really hard to believe that Israel did this without the green light from the United States of America. And one of the reasons why I say that is because there's a narrative coming out of the mainstream liberal media is that, well, America's not involved, right? And it's like, no, we are involved. Okay, how can we not be involved when we're basically funding it? When you look at the intelligence, when you look at the military weapons, when you look at all of the resources that Israel has, I mean, who gave that to them, right? Who enabled them to be able to have the capabilities that they have? We did. So it's impossible for us not to be involved. Okay. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
On the phone with us now, CNN's Dana Bash, who I understand, Dana, just had a chance to speak with President Trump. What did he tell you?
Good morning, John. Yes. I mean, first question I had was about what his point of view is about the strike that Israel conducted, multiple strikes that Israel conducted last night. I know we were reporting real time that his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, released a statement simply saying that Israel informed the Trump administration about these strikes beforehand, but didn't say explicitly that the U.S. supported what Israel was doing. So that's how I started a very brief conversation. And he responded by saying, quote, "We, of course, support Israel, obviously, and supported it like nobody has ever supported it." And then he went on to say this: "Iran should have listened to me when I said, I don't know if you know this, but I gave them a 60-day warning, and today is day 61. And then he said, they, meaning Iran, should now come to the table to make a deal before it's too late." And then he said something really noteworthy. He said, "The people I was dealing with are dead, the hardliners." To which I just wanted to underscore. So what you're saying is Israel has now killed the people who you were dealing with. And he said very sarcastically, they didn't die of the flu. They didn't die of COVID. It was a brief conversation, but my takeaway was twofold. Number one, they are really hoping that instead of escalating the situation, which is what most people, our terrific reporters and analysts you've been talking to all morning, believe is possible, even probable, he's hoping that instead of that, this forces Iran to come to the table. We'll see if that's going to happen.
Yeah. So you seen that, you heard that. Now, again, it is noteworthy that Israel decided to not play around with Iran, right, when it comes to the first strike. And best believe this is an offensive strike, right? This is Israel's going to say, well, this is defense. Well, kind of, right? The rationale behind it is that, well, we need to take out their nuclear capabilities before they're able to build a nuke, okay, which means that, hey, we're doing this ultimately for defensive reasons. But again, this is an offensive strike, and ultimately the offensive strike was designed to do maximum damage from the beginning, right? We're going to go ahead and just take out your top generals. We're going to take out your top scientists. We're going to take out your nuclear facilities from the beginning, and we're going to let you know we're serious, right? And again, there's just something about that you got to respect, whether you like Israel or don't. You just got to respect it. And the reason why I say this is because it shows strength, right? It really does. It shows you that, hey, we're not playing around when it comes to this, okay? You had an opportunity to negotiate a deal. You've been taking too long, right? So now we're just going to do what we got to do to castrate you, okay, to remove your ability or to significantly set Iran back when it comes to their ability to develop nukes and go from there, right? And again, the reason why I say that you kind of got to respect this is because Benjamin Netanyahu is basically doing all the things that the mainstream liberal media said that Putin would do in Ukraine, right? Benjamin Netanyahu seems to be everything that they claim that Putin is, right? And a lot of people don't like when I say this, but I say this because it's just true. I don't think that Putin is really that guy, right? I personally think compared to past Russian leaders, like, for example, a Stalin or a Lenin, I think that Putin is weak, right? Putin is weak compared to his predecessors in regards to how ruthless he's able to be, right? Because in the situation with Ukraine, again, they're now essentially fighting a war of attrition with a neighboring state that is much weaker than them because Putin is not willing to go all the way when it comes to taking out Ukraine and their abilities to fight back, right? Netanyahu is not being as lenient with Iran as Putin is with Ukraine, right? If Putin was really that guy, then from the beginning, they would have done what Netanyahu just did to Iran, right? To let them know that, hey, we're serious. You need to give up immediately, right? Surrender right now, or else there's going to be more hell to pay. That's not how Putin is rolling, right, in Ukraine. And again, that's why I try to say that Putin is just, again, he's not that guy, right? He ain't really that guy. But Benjamin Netanyahu might actually be that guy. Again, this is not coming from a pro-Israel perspective. It's coming from a neutral third party, like, I'm just calling it like I see it. And this is kind of par for the course when it comes to how Western powers move when it comes to warfare, okay? Because we saw when the United States of America invaded Iraq, we toppled that country. We essentially destroyed that country in a matter of weeks, okay? We didn't fight a war of attrition with them. We took out that country, again, in no time, okay? And then we humiliated their leader, Saddam Hussein, right? Not only was he executed, but there was a symbolic dismantlement of his legacy as a leader of that country, right? His statue was taken down, the head dragged through the streets. He was found in a hole. After they captured the guy, they conducted humiliating medical exams on him, right? I mean, there were rumors that they stuck a pole up his butt, right? And we don't know if that's true or not, but that's the rumor. So I'm just saying that it's just different in regards to how Western powers move. And we've seen this time and time and time again. Look what happened to Gaddafi out in Libya, right? We backed rebels that eventually ended up taking out Gaddafi, right? And then Hillary Clinton laughed, right? She laughed about it. She said, we came, we saw, and he died. That's what she said. She laughed afterwards. So again, this is why countries like, for example, Iran, this is why they want nukes so bad, because nukes kind of make you, to a certain extent, United States or Western invasion proof, right? If Iran was to be able to acquire nukes, then they would essentially end up like North Korea, which is a pariah state that we would have invaded or toppled had they not had nukes, right? The only reason that we haven't got rid of Kim Jong-un yet is because of the fact that they have nukes and that they could possibly use those nukes on our allies, right? Their neighbors, South Korea, Japan, etc. Yeah, so Iran kind of understands how the West moves, right? And this is why, again, allegedly they want nukes so bad and they're trying to get nukes, is because they know that, well, we had nukes, then essentially that gives us a shield, right? Somewhat more protection from the United States of America and Western powers when it comes to their ability to attack, right? Or to try to stage coups and to try to topple our government. And that's why Israel is going ahead and striking first, because they understand that, okay, well, if they get a nuke, then that significantly limits what we can do, right? And the type of operations that we can conduct against Iran. And also on top of that, it opens up the possibility that Iran could be crazy enough to use a nuke on a country like Israel. And Israel is small enough that, you know, even one nuclear attack would be absolutely devastating for that country. Now, again, this is something that is supported not just by Israel, but also you have the Saudis, other Arab allies in the region as well, too. Yeah, they're all behind this, okay? This is not just something Israel's solely doing. Best believe this has been coordinated with United States of America, with the Saudis, with everybody in the region who is essentially against Iran, right? They don't want to see Iran get nukes either, because Iran getting nukes is also a threat to their interest as well, too. Iran is a sponsor of Islamic terrorism in that region, right? Whether you talk about Hezbollah, okay, whether you talk about the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas, right? Iran, they are funding this, okay? They're backing it up. They're supplying weapons. All of these things are against the interests of Israel, is against the interests of the Saudis and other Arab allies, which again is fascinating, because you would think that Iran and, you know, Saudi Arabia would have more in common, considering the fact that they are Muslim, even though it's a Sunni Shia thing, right? They do have that difference, but you would think that Saudi Arabia, again, would have more in common with Iran and more mutual interests than Saudis would have with Israel, because, again, they're Jews. But again, that's not the case, right? That's not the case here. And again, you're kind of seeing how this is playing out. So again, I just want people to understand, right? I want to give people the real deal. I don't want to come up here and to do what a lot of people are going to do, which again, they're going to say, oh, this is World War III. Oh, they're dragging us. No, this is not World War III. And people got to understand what peace through strength actually means. Peace through strength doesn't mean being a pacifist, right? It doesn't mean playing defense all the time, right? Peace through strength means that, hey, in a calculated way, sometimes we got to go on the offensive because we can't allow our neighbor, right? In the case of, again, Israel, they can't allow their neighbor to get a nuke, right? Because once they get a nuke, that significantly changes the geopolitical calculus in regards to how you can deal with Iran and their terrorism, right? So with that being said, again, does that mean that I support regime change in Iran? Not necessarily. It just means that I understand why Israel's doing what they have to do, right? And I also understand Iran's perspective in this and why they would want to acquire a nuke and what they're trying to do, right? I understand the perspectives from essentially all sides, right? But I don't think that regime change is going to bring about more stability. And it seems like that could be ultimately what Israel was going for. And again, if that happens, again, we have seen before in the past how regime change does not lead to the expected outcomes. But maybe in this situation, Iran is wise enough to go ahead and bend the knee, right? To go ahead and to give up, right? To wave the white flag and to say, you know what? We're done, right? We can't really fight back, which they can't. They can't fight back. We've seen this time and time and time again when President Trump decided to assassinate General Soleimani, right? The mainstream media was crying World War III didn't happen, okay? Last year, I believe Iran launched an attack on Israel and nothing happened, right? That wasn't World War III. Again, Iran is weak, right? They don't have the capabilities to take on the West, not unless they got a death wish, right? I mean, they want to take on Israel and the United States of America. It's just not going to end up well for them, right? So I don't think that they're suicidal, despite the fact that Ayatollah is going to come out here and say a whole bunch of stuff about how he's going to get revenge and how there's going to be bloodshed and all this other stuff. They're going to say a whole bunch of stuff, right? They're going to say a whole bunch of stuff. But that's to save face, okay? Honestly, at the end of the day, they know that they don't have the cards, right? They do not have the cards at all, okay? And again, that could be why we're already seeing some reports here suggesting that the Iranian officials are calling President Trump in order to talk, right? This is what they're saying. This is what President Trump is saying, quote, "They're calling me to speak," said Trump. When asked to identify who was calling, he said, "The same people we worked with the last time, many of them are dead now." Okay, so again, we're going to see. Maybe this brings him to the table. Maybe not. Okay, if not, then I just don't think it's going to end up well for them. And the sad part about it for Iran is that it's probably damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because again, going back to Saddam and Iraq, they gave up their ability to acquire nukes in the 90s. Okay. And we still invaded, right? We still toppled Saddam like a decade later, right? So it's one of those things where it's like giving up your ability to get weapons of mass destruction probably just leads to you inevitably being invaded anyways, right? Or being toppled anyways if you don't want to play ball with the West. So that's just kind of how it goes. In the situation of Iran, again, it's probably damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? If they actually get a nuke, then it means that they're less likely, okay, to be invaded, right, or to have regime change or to be toppled. However, if they give up their ability to get a nuke, then it means that it's probably going to happen anyways, right? So again, it's a really bad situation for Iran. They're really stuck between a rock and a hard place here. But ultimately, again, this is why they're weak, right? This is why I say that they're in a place of weakness. This is why it's not going to be World War III like a lot of people are fear-mongering about. And I know that this perspective makes it sound like the United States is evil, like the West is evil, but it's not really about good versus evil. It's really about conquering versus being conquered, right? And that is the way that I kind of view geopolitical conflicts. It really is about strength versus weakness. Who's strong, who's weak. The strong survive, the weak don't. And that's just kind of how it is, right? That really is how it is. It's not a good versus evil thing when you talk about these type of conflicts. It's really about conquering versus being conquered, right? If you're not actively conquering, then you're being conquered. And that's just how it's been throughout all of history, period, right? Now, again, that doesn't mean that I support war in the sense that we should be warmongering for no reason. That's not what I'm saying, right? Or that we should be fighting unnecessary wars. It just means that at times, in order to prevent a larger conflict or to prevent more warfare, you have to engage in a smaller war in order to do that. And in this situation, I'm not saying it's necessary per se, because I don't know if Iran would actually use a nuke if they got a nuke. But I do know that if they had a nuke, right, considering their terrorist activities that they have funded and supported against the United States and the West, it's probably not a good thing to allow them to get a nuke. And right now, while they're weak without a nuke, if you're going to strike, if you're going to take out their ability to get a nuke, if you're going to prevent them to get a nuke, then you probably should do it now and not wait until they actually get a nuke. Because if you allow them to get a nuke, then you have a lot less leverage in regards to how you deal with them.
It sounds like such an interesting conversation, though brief, and you hit on what seems to be emerging as one of the key questions here, especially based on what Secretary of State Marco Rubio said almost immediately after the attacks began, which was basically this was Israel acting unilaterally. It's one thing if President Trump says this morning that he supports Israel. It's another if he signed off, as it were, on the attacks yesterday. And it's still hard to tell where that line is, Dan.
He definitely, yeah, I mean, it's such an important point, John. He definitely did not say, I signed off on this. He said, I support Israel. We support Israel. We support Israel like no one has ever done before. And, obviously, the whole sort of reason for this line of questioning, which you wouldn't normally ask of the Trump administration when it comes to the state of Israel, particularly that government, is because of that statement that Marco Rubio put out, but also because of the really important nuance here, which is the immediate concern for retaliation by Iran, not just against Israel, but against U.S. assets in and around the region. And we didn't get, deep into that conversation at all. We didn't have time, frankly. I didn't have time. But that is why I, really wanted to push him on the notion of support for Israel. Again, I would not say just because he said he supports Israel that he is suggesting that he signed off on this strike that Israel launched last night.
Yeah. I have a hard time believing that Israel would do it without the president signing off on it, but it's not in the president's interest, again, for reasons outlined by CNN, for him to come out and to say whether or not he signed off on it, because essentially that could put our own troops in danger. But again, the operation was conducted in order to try to force Iran's hand. And that is one thing I don't like about the relationship between the United States and Israel, is that sometimes it kind of seems like Israel is the top dog in a relationship when it actually should be the other way around, right? We should have Israel on a leash, not the other way around. But again, it does seem like a lot of times that Israel has us on a leash, right? But, I think that the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? It's probably more nuanced and complex than what people would like to admit. Regardless, this is one of those situations where, again, the media and a lot of leftists, and again, some people on the right too, who, the anti-Zionist crowd, they're going to overblow this and try to say, oh, well, this is World War III. It's not World War III. At the end of the day, what it is the West conducting an operation to essentially force Iran's hand when it comes to preventing them from building nuclear weapons, right? And that's what's happening, right? That's what's going on. And ultimately today, negotiating is not enough. At times, you got to show people, hey, we're willing to go to war, right? If you don't want to come to a deal, then okay, then we're just going to go to war, right? We're going to do what we got to do, and that's it, right? That's just what it is. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.